Amazon just announced it's selling custom AI chips directly to customers, and by all accounts, it could actually work. For the past 5 years, Nvidia has owned 85% of the AI chip market, setting prices and terms almost entirely unchecked. But now Amazon's making a move that signals something huge is shifting in the trillion-dollar AI infrastructure race. Here's what's happening. Amazon's been making custom chips called Trainium and Inferentia for years, but they were locked inside AWS, only available to Amazon's own cloud customers. Now they're selling them separately, directly to any company that wants an alternative to Nvidia. This matters because Nvidia's H100 GPU costs around $40,000 or more. Amazon's equivalent delivers 80 to 90% of that performance for most workloads, but at half the price. The timing is critical. AI companies are desperate to diversify away from single-source dependency. When you can only buy from one supplier, that supplier controls your costs and your roadmap. Google and Microsoft have tried building their own custom chips for years. Amazon's just the first with the courage to actually sell theirs as a real product and challenge Nvidia head-on. This could reshape the entire industry. And here's what the headlines aren't telling you. To understand why Amazon's challenge is so significant, you need to know how Nvidia became this untouchable titan. Back in the early 2010s, Nvidia built CUDA, a programming language that lets developers write code specifically for Nvidia GPUs. Think of it like this. If CPUs are reliable delivery trucks, GPUs are speedboats, slower in some ways, but incredible at parallel processing. Nvidia's CUDA ecosystem was genius. Thousands of researchers and companies spent years writing code specifically for it. By the time AI exploded in 2016 with deep learning, Nvidia's GPUs were the only sensible choice. Everyone was already trained on CUDA, all the libraries worked with it, and switching meant rewriting everything from scratch. So Nvidia didn't just have good chips, they had lock-in. They became the default choice by sheer momentum. Then the AI boom hit. OpenAI trained ChatGPT on thousands of Nvidia H100 GPUs. Every startup rushed to build language models, and they all bought Nvidia. Every cloud company, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, started provisioning Nvidia GPUs to customers. Demand exploded. Nvidia couldn't make chips fast enough. There were literally waiting lists for GPUs costing tens of thousands of dollars each. Companies paid premium prices, waited months for delivery, and became completely dependent on Nvidia. That's when cloud providers realized, we need our own chips. But here's the twist nobody expected. Amazon's chips aren't just cheaper knockoffs. They're fundamentally different, designed specifically for workloads that matter most to enterprise customers. Here's the key. Nvidia built general-purpose chips that do everything decently. Amazon built specialized chips that do specific things brilliantly. Trainium is Amazon's training chip, optimized ruthlessly for running machine learning training jobs. Nvidia's GPUs are like Swiss Army knives. They do everything reasonably well. Trainium is more like a specialized racing engine, built specifically for the mathematics of neural networks. Result: for many training jobs, Trainium matches Nvidia's performance while cutting power consumption and heat output by 30 to 40%. Then there's Inferentia, Amazon's chip for inference, which is running trained models in production. Inference is honestly what most companies actually do with AI. They train once, but run predictions thousands of times daily. Inferentia is optimized ruthlessly for that. It's smaller, cheaper, and more efficient than Nvidia's GPUs for inference. Here's the economic insight. Amazon isn't trying to beat Nvidia at everything. They're beating Nvidia exactly where 90% of companies spend their money, in inference workloads powering chatbots, recommendations, and production AI. On that specific battlefield, Amazon is genuinely competitive on both performance and price. That changes the equation. Amazon's not just talking about these chips, they're already shipping them to real customers. Hundreds of enterprises are testing Trainium and Inferentia inside AWS right now, and the early results are stunning. DuckDB switched to Inferentia and cut their inference costs by 60% while maintaining identical performance. Another startup cut their monthly AI bill by half just by retraining models to work with Amazon's chips. Here's what's interesting. These aren't just cutting-edge research labs. These are normal businesses running normal AI workloads. A financial services company using Inferentia for credit risk analysis cut both latency and costs. An e-commerce company running recommendation models at scale saw per inference cost drop dramatically. The pattern is consistent. On inference workloads powering real customer-facing AI features, Amazon's chips deliver. Outside AWS, companies are ordering these chips directly from Amazon for their own data centers. That's never happened before. Nvidia's always controlled the entire channel, how chips are sold, terms, training, relationships. Amazon just bypassed that entire system. They're selling direct to enterprises, offering better pricing, offering real alternatives. Companies are actually choosing to move off Nvidia, which seemed impossible 2 years ago. The switching is happening right now. That's the signal that matters most. Let's get specific about the numbers, because that's where this gets interesting. On raw GPU compute performance, Nvidia's H100 is still the absolute fastest. Nvidia owns that ranking. But raw speed isn't what most businesses need. Cost per performance is what matters. An Nvidia H100 GPU costs roughly $40,000 to $50,000 upfront plus $10,000 annually in power and cooling. Add Nvidia's software stack, licensing, tooling, total cost of ownership gets expensive fast. Amazon's Trainium chip costs maybe $15,000 to $20,000 upfront with significantly lower power and cooling costs. For a company running inference at scale, processing millions of requests daily, that's a game-changing difference. Over 3 years, you might save millions of dollars choosing Amazon over Nvidia, but Nvidia still wins on ecosystem breadth. There are libraries, frameworks, tutorials, and experienced engineers for virtually every use case. If you're doing cutting-edge research or training brand-new architectures, Nvidia's ecosystem is dominant. Amazon's is smaller and growing. Nvidia also wins on raw training performance if you're pushing absolute frontier research. Amazon wins on price and efficiency for inference and standard workloads. For 90% of businesses, Amazon's advantage is bigger. The gaps are closing every quarter. This is what disruption looks like. Here's what most analysis misses. This isn't just Amazon versus Nvidia. This is about supply chain independence for every AI company on Earth. For 3 years, the entire AI industry has operated under artificial scarcity. There aren't enough Nvidia chips. They're allocated by Nvidia. Want more chips than Nvidia thinks you deserve? You wait. You pay premium prices. You accept their terms. This has distorted the entire market. Companies built architectures around Nvidia's availability, constraints rather than what makes sense. Now, with Amazon's chips available, that changes fundamentally. Enterprises can finally diversify their supply. They're not locked into Nvidia anymore. They have leverage. They can negotiate. Nvidia will have to drop prices and improve terms just to compete. That price pressure ripples through the entire industry. Google's TPUs become more attractive. Other chip makers get second looks. Suppliers who were desperate suddenly have options. Innovation accelerates because companies aren't just buying whatever Nvidia allocates. They are choosing based on what's best for their workload. Customers get choice. Choice drives competition. Competition drives innovation and lower prices. The entire AI industry has been held back by Nvidia's monopoly power. Breaking that monopoly is genuinely transformative. This is the moment the AI infrastructure market stops being Nvidia's private kingdom. If you're responsible for AI infrastructure decisions, here's what you need to think about. First question, what are you doing with AI? If it's inference, running trained models in production, Amazon's chips are worth evaluating seriously. Get cost estimates for your actual workload, because that's where Amazon shines. If you're training cutting-edge research models or pushing the absolute frontier, Nvidia's ecosystem is still probably safer. More tooling, more expertise, better documentation. But if you're doing standard model training for business purposes, run the numbers. Amazon's power and cooling efficiency might make them cheaper overall, even accounting for ecosystem differences. Second question, can you retrain your models? Switching from Nvidia to Amazon isn't completely seamless. You might need to recompile code or adjust parameters. If you're locked into Nvidia through massive model checkpoints and can't retrain, switching costs real time and money, but if you have flexibility to retrain, cost savings might be enormous. Third question, what's your risk tolerance? Nvidia is the safe choice because everyone uses it. If something breaks, the entire industry jumps to help. Amazon is newer. If something goes weird, you're in a smaller community. For risk-averse enterprises, that matters. Fourth question, what's your scale? At small scale, price differences barely matter. at massive scale. Cheaper hardware saves millions of dollars yearly. That's when Amazon becomes not just viable but mandatory. Ask those 4 questions. Here's what matters. The trillion-dollar AI infrastructure market is no longer Nvidia's by default. For the first time in 5 years, enterprises have real alternatives backed by real hardware, real performance, and real cost savings. Amazon's move signals something seismic. Other chip makers, Google, Intel, Qualcomm, will see this as proof you can actually compete. They'll get bolder. The market will splinter from Nvidia's absolute dominance into a real competitive landscape. That's good for innovation, good for costs, and good for every company building AI products. Nvidia will adapt. They'll probably drop prices. They'll accelerate software ecosystem investments. Competition is coming and they know it. The momentum is shifting. For years, the story was, if you want AI chips, Nvidia is your only option. Now it's, Nvidia is still the safest default, but you have real alternatives. That's a fundamentally different market. In 12 months, there will be way more Trainium and Inferentia chips deployed. In 2 years, there'll be industry standard for inference. In 5 years, Nvidia's market share will look very different. That's not prediction, it's basic economics. When you break a monopoly, markets change. Watch for announcements from other chip makers. Watch Amazon expand their lineup. Watch for price drops across the entire industry. The age of Nvidia's unchecked power is ending. The age of real competition in AI chips is beginning. Follow for daily AI news.